then the other side were all the, what is it now, it's like a French market council. In the, whatever that is. Yeah. We actually, we had friends a couple in Texas a couple of weeks ago, and America's Cup was there. They had a trial race for America's Cup. It was like 7 boats. And so, yeah, so we just thought we wanted to. It was kind of weird because, you know, it's very affluent people and they're all drinking champagne and watching these mixed boats. But it was still like kind of interesting to wander over and see what's going on.
Boats that dock there are unbelievable.
Yeah. Yeah, so actually the event's Saturday and Monday night.
And so will that go under the luxury or the affordable?
We're luxury. I think it's more like it's, you know.
Yeah, I think a lot of these are border.
Yeah,
It is
I think it's
like
great.
well, I just like restarted it so that wouldn't.
What's your name? I didn't realize we were on. That's hilarious.
Nothing.
We should announce that because this is a.
That's right.
Okay. Yeah, somebody else has the same idea.
Are you? Oh my god, that's great. I know, I have that bed.
Yeah, right. We should
I just
announce
overheard.
at some point, or we should announce because this is, I guess sort of a personal topic that we're live streaming. I mean, I think everybody knows, they've been to the website, but we should announce.
Is the live stream on?
Is the live stream on now? Yes. Okay. Cheers. Cheers.
Yeah. We're friends. Great jobs. It's perfectly nice. Just we're displaced. There was something else that was supposed to happen, but it didn't work out, so we were more of a backup.
Anyone who hasn't been to events here with us before, we are live streaming. So if you don't want to be live strummed, find a way to anonymize.
Yes, definitely.
There are paper bags available somewhere.
You could walk around, well, the thing is they'll see you walking around. Let's find somebody. So is that,
I mean, if somebody really doesn't,
No, so far it hasn't come up. Everybody's been fine with it, but
yeah.
it would be an accommodation.
Exactly.
Hey, you guys, do you want to pass out the article someone will be reading it? So maybe there are tests, but for now we can read those. Everybody might. Oh no, you're right. I thought they were together.
There's an article and then there's like a handout that we're gonna go over.
No,
Quiz?
it has a definite like a.
There's multiple choice.
So this is just some light reading material. And then Shane has
Light, slightly depressing reading material. No
Yes.
big deal.
I was going for light
whatnot.
Right.
That sounds really great.
Yeah. And one of the parents.
Yeah. Yeah, then it was time here. That's the next chapter. Yeah.
I'm sure I'll be like, what? There, but I'm very easy.
Yeah, they put me up. Part of Knoxville. Yeah, they put me up.
I don't know his name. You know the story?
Yeah. Deserve it.
Well, there was something in the last couple of weeks.
Yeah, because it.
They finally busted him up. They arrested him and his
And
manager.
his cop.
Oh,
Yeah.
it's funny, my son's that road.
They're under all
Yeah,
these
it's just a lot.
buying buildings, forcing the fixed rent people out, and then converting them into leases. That they're doing like something like 30 buildings in the last 20 years. They finally got him.
Yeah, exactly.
I
Yeah.
Well, I think these are safer than the weird water.
I know.
I think so. People figure it out.
That's the first test. Is whether you can read the word.
You can do this, you can do that.
You can balance it out. So we have to select together.
I was gonna move this chair, the webcam is over there,
Yeah, so we can sit here.
so yeah, I was gonna move this chair over there.
Sure. So it's very comfortable.
Buy the building.
Yeah,
Let's
yeah.
buy this building.
They are not.
Yeah, the first
Well,
shop.
This building.
I don't know, the two speeds of the last assessment. One speedboat is not enough.
Need a backup.
Yeah, like what if the engine on the first one stalls?
Look, what if you want to race?
That's a very good, but you're like, well,
Yeah.
this speedboat's good for racing and this other one is good for
good for
cruising around. Like,
cruising.
how do you like get rid of
Yeah,
one?
choose.
Yeah, but having two speedboats seems lower class.
Don't tap in.
There's no sailing vessel.
It's just very easy.
Yeah.
She made a big dent in it.
Yeah. I don't have this one.
Turn this phone. Shouldn't come in and just throw it away.
I know.
Well, you can throw it away on beer and coffee.
Okay, so one of my
You
favorite
can
things
throw it out for a
is,
day.
Yes.
do you know when people like leave their ATM receipts? You just like.
Oh, yeah, you have balance.
Yeah. Yeah.
And somebody's just like, who knows what's going on, but like, you know, the occasional one where it's like $20,000. You know, you're like,
Can I get you a rosé or a beer? You want water?
I do. I just want to yeah, it's just for that, but I'm like,
Yeah.
basic.
Yeah. Oh, really? So, have you guys been to LACMA recently?
Okay.
Like in the last
That's
year.
a good trip.
Yeah, like in the last year. So they opened up a new restaurant with big water, so many.
This one?
I actually ate there the last time I was there, but not there.
Okay.
It was in the like sort of cafeteria part.
Okay. Yeah, I mean
Two
outdoor
vacation homes?
restaurant.
What is that?
Two.
I just had to like.
One doesn't cut it.
So there's a speedboat
For each vacation home. Exactly, because they're both on
Because
islands.
I wanted him to go through how the different waters.
You gotta know your needs and buy according to your needs.
In his inspired opinion, if I remember correctly, it does have more of a mineral taste than typical water. So, yeah.
Oh, hi, Aisha. I'm Jen.
some of them is a combination of both.
No, right.
What point do you realize?
Assets like that.
Isn't there like $10?
They can.
Yeah, I don't think they necessarily are, but I think that they can. And I don't
The unnamed.
Oh, yeah. It's a good question. I feel like I don't actually, because I also don't really know like, I have this person I can call, but I don't really use it for a lot. Like, see how no, we don't really have to talk about they're just, they don't really know who we are.
I know one name.
Does it help them?
And there's Scott, Lisa.
That kind of shit. Like,
So for a while,
But I like
tried to split like one of the credit cards, but it's just like very low on the balance. Just like you get more. So shopping and then paying it off immediately from another account. And then like I can't just keep paying the regular thing all the time. Like I just pay at the end of the month. It's like
I didn't have
so
to.
basically it's like if you say the credit card you don't wrap up as much reward as you could, you know, automate it all. I mean things you can do when you're like
so look at, so this is why she doing this, and then she put her back, she has 500 and then, so control is that.
Yeah, it's a good idea. That's too much. I think also, where is it? That's so hard about shame.
Alright, anyway, so at the end of each one, she'll
Like,
put
yeah,
herself
like
in
the house.
the
But you have to, I mean, you're not.
There's a lot of
Right,
things.
and you're like wrapping up for that.
No, I know, but overstated.
You know what's funny? Superstitious. I have a friend.
Like I get to try to tell a story to all the ladies. Turns out,
All the money goes out. And I'm just sitting here talking about this event. I have to pick my bag up off the ground. Well, I am down. That's my friend like poisoned. What am I doing? My friend like poisoned me, and now I can't get my bag on the ground. Yeah, I think so. Or like sometimes I'll actually put my coat on the ground and then put my bag on the ground. Here, I can do this. That's better. Now it's letting something going on.
I really should have. What is it?
we hire her? What does she have to do?
Maybe you're
This
rubbish.
guy.
She has a pardon her.
Ovid. That's what that looks like.
Yeah, that's exception from Bitcoin.
But it looks like Ovid coin, like.
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
I know a woman who used to work in this wine shop that I have information. She was for her entire dress was in wine. They called it out. Wine, yeah.
And really, like, you could, yeah.
Which is actually like apparently illegal somehow. You like find different. Well, it's not. It's like gray area. So you find like algorithmic chains that other people haven't, but then you can then sell on the gray market. So yeah, $320,000.
Good for her.
Yeah.
Bitcoin still values 443,000.
That's so much.
You're also all
I
snacks
own
and
like
drinks.
a very
There's snacks and
like
there's
$3.
wine and there's beer.
I think no one's in
It's better to drink before you buy alcohol.
I talk about money free. I tried to buy something with Bitcoin, which involves like it takes like 10 days to get your dollars into Bitcoin, and then you can buy things with Bitcoin on Overstock. And so I bought like a pair of sandals and on Overstock with Bitcoin, and then there was extra. feel
That's not the 10th
Oh,
event.
why?
Yeah, exactly. So he said that there are only 6 more to go in case we would like to come back. So tonight we'll talk about finances, and I will let Jen introduce our guest. Thank you so much for coming.
I feel like you guys will probably do a better job of introducing yourself, but we have Jillian Steinhauer and Shane Farrow here as our non-experts.
Yeah.
We're
And
the opposite of experts.
we're also live streaming if anyone, if that changes what anyone says. To let everyone know. Go ahead, and you want to introduce yourselves and
So I'm Shane. I'm kind of a financial business journalist, economics, sort of. I don't know what to call myself. I work at the Huffington Post. But I started my career writing about the art market, art info. So I have a particular interest in art.
I'm Jillian. I don't write about finance. Shane is more qualified to do this than I am. I write about art for a website called My Project, and just wanted to participate. And so we put together this event. So what we're gonna do is we want to go around and have everyone introduce themselves. We will start and reintroduce ourselves. What we want you to do is tell us your name. Just your name, and then some kind of financial fact about yourself. It doesn't have to be a problem. It doesn't have to be negative. It can be a problem. It can just be something that sucks. But we just want to get people started thinking and talking about money and finances. So
It would be helpful if there was a number involved.
yeah, it doesn't have to be, but it would be good.
Yeah. I hobby, which is bike racing. Yeah, if anything is gonna bankrupt me, it is that.
Like, you should like deal with your teeth, and I was like, ah. And then finally, I was like, I can do this now. Like, let's do this. And then, of course, because there were more teeth that needed. That if we did. I spent a lot of money on my
spending what little bit of art money I have left. um, but yeah, and I mean, right now I work in a 3/4 time position where my take-home monthly pay is about $2,800 a month. But that includes insurance and benefits, so and the free studio. So there's even more value added to that.
My name is Chase Martin. What will I say? Probably, I like to think of myself as a pretty, like, careful spender, but over the past 3 years, like, I actually added a bunch of stuff up in that. Does anyone use that Mint app for their like budgeting? I spent almost $4,000 on weddings over the past 3 years.
Stop getting married.
No, man, I don't know about you. I'm from the South, and like people are just. I'm 20 years old. Like we're dropping like flies. And that's probably been
Yeah, that's
the
real.
most like serious. That's where a lot of my savings account has gone
Yeah.
over the past three. I guess maybe 4 years.
My name is Terry, and I have been with my husband Fred for 44 years,
Wow.
and we started with nothing, literally, and now we're heading towards retirement. Carefully planning.
So you're gonna run this evening session.
And I'm Fred, the other half of this lengthy couple. And so we've got a son who is an entrepreneur and went to university and called one night and asked for another $125 so he can take what basically sounded like a matchbook sponsored real estate course. You know, the number was on the back of the matchbook cover. And he somehow turned that into a multi-million-dollar real estate business while he was still in college.
Wow.
And
That's your retirement.
and that is in part our retirement because it taught us how to monetize whatever assets we had and have cash flow.
Great.
Okay, my name's Gren. I'm graduating college this year, and I'd like to get a job and pay back my school debt instead of having my family write a check for me.
My name's Don. I'm Michaela's husband. I teach in a private school and I make about $90,000 a year, and that's probably it holds me back from doing all the writing, which is I really care about because I don't want to lose that money. So I keep saying, no, I'll just do one more year. I'll let the book slide. So it can be a albatross as well.
My name's Virginia. I'm an art historian, and I don't live in New York City, and so my $58,000 a year salary has enabled me to buy a very nice, very comfortable house in Memphis, Tennessee. Yeah. But the extra money I save enables me to come here and have some dinner.
Oh, so we
And
got
this
it.
kind of sucks.
My name's Norton, and this is about my 7th time to start over from ground zero. I was married, had a kid. She went crazy, kidnapped, and disappeared. That took all my money, all my savings. Came to New York, started all over again from scratch. Had a Hasidic landlord who burned the building down so he could get the insurance money. Built a new set of lofts. Borrowed, spent 3 years building walls. Got 30,000 square feet. Got my things going. Got my career going again. I also lost my job at Columbia. I've been teaching steel sculpture for 10 years. And then found my kid. Had to fight a whole cult. Lost my kid back to the cult. My building got bought by the mob. Lost my building to the mob. So I'm starting all over again from ground zero one more time. And now I'm working as an art handler for the Whitney. And I'm using that to my benefit because though I don't make much money, I went out and did something nobody else has done, which was get all my guys' shows. And I've now, in another show this coming week, by the end of this year I'll have it shown, either curated or shown 25 times. Because I'm just hustling all the guys from the Whitney because they're so damn good. But I'm always broke. I'm too old to be this broke. I'm just tapped.
My name is Shazine. I just graduated from college, and so I live at home and interning, so it's just like trying to figure out where I'm going, but like I didn't graduate with debt, so that's a blessing, but just, I don't really have enough to like support myself.
Is it a paid internship or not?
It's technically.
Hi, I'm Erin Gleason. Here are quite a few things actually. So I moved to New York 7 years ago with no savings and no job and made about $300 in my pocket. Typical New York story, right? You can all relate to that if you're not from here. And I moved in the peak of the recession. So my original plans of going back into advertising, all that, but no, that did not happen. So it took about 4 years, I think, to finally be stable and just exhale and not worry about losing my apartment. And now I work part-time in architecture, which just pays my basic bills. And the big thing for me right now is I'm going back to school, and I just took out student loans. And I'm going back to school in philosophy, which is like art, and I have
Great
no
picture.
idea how I'm going to make a living. And I really, really want to teach as well. I'm passionate about that, but I also have a lot of friends who are adjuncts, and they're like, Erin, what are you going to do? So these are the dilemmas, and I'd love to have family close to 40. I'd love to have a child someday. It's just like basic things, have a little saving, and a child and family, and have time to maintain an art practice on top of that.
My name is Aisha. I'm an artist. I work for myself part-time, about like 16 to 24 hours a week, depending upon the week. And then I work part-time in the office, about 24 hours a week. And I guess my biggest financial sort of like puzzle right now is figuring out housing, what kind of trajectory of it. Right now, I have a situation where I live with my family for like 460 a month. I can't do it forever though. Just for context, I'm 37. I used to have my own apartment, and I had a full-time job as an experiment. People don't usually do that, but I experimented and got a full-time day job. It's fascinating, hard to exit. I made my way out, and I didn't have a business plan, so I sort of like ran through my savings, and then wound up letting go of my apartment and moving with my family to pay off the debt. But yeah, in the meantime, gentrification has hit, and so it's sort of extra, I guess, challenging to figure out, like, as I get myself back together financially, is it realistic to try to look for a place in the city? Should I just kind of give it up and move to another state?
I'm Ashish. I'm about to start grad school, so that's basically no more income for like the next 2 years. So something obviously I'm not too happy about.
I'm Leslie, and I'm an artist. My husband and I have been happy since '82. Two adult daughters now that we've somehow managed to get them through college, and we're still trying to pay off for them to help get them started, their college loans. My husband got laid off 15 years ago, and decided he was going to start a real estate business, which he's had pretty good success with, but you're a 1099 employee for any of the big companies here, and we still have really wild swings. When he was doing really well a number of years ago, I stopped consulting, so I make a little money from my art, but it's not like having the full-time money. I mean, in all of that, it's still fairly fortunate.
Those weren't fun at all.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Hi, I'm Larissa. I work for More Arts, and I'm also in grad school at NYU. I was very lucky in the Draper program, and I got a pretty significant scholarship, which
I'm Jeff. I also work with More Art. I guess I'll tell a good story. I have gone to CUNY forever and don't pay anything because I get a lot of scholarships. So go CUNY.
Great. Well, we were afraid that people weren't going to open up enough, so I think we're fine. Yeah.
Everyone drink more.
We're great. So does everyone have a worksheet and a Wall Street Journal article? Sorry, this is what I mean by the worksheet. Sorry, there's a worksheet on that. So yeah, we're just gonna talk through a few things. Like I said, I write about economics a lot, so I gathered some things that I have written about to talk about sort of the larger financial picture for Americans on average, which has gotten significantly worse since 1999 when incomes peaked. So this is kind of just to show that if you feel like things have not gotten better, you are totally and completely average. Because that's true for a lot of people. And I think the kind of big financial story of the last 20 years has been sort of that incomes peaked in 1999, and then sort of through the early 2000s, people used debt and home equity loans to sort of paper over that lack of.
You don't trust him near the beginning?
It's for everyone. Didn't want to make it that obvious.
That's like 50 in the middle of the circle.
Yeah, but then the credit bubble inflated because people were trying to make up for the fact that inflation had kind of eroded their income, and individual people were probably not aware of this, but this was kind of the big financial story. And then in 2008, everything collapsed, and we had a giant recession that fucked over pretty much everybody outside the 1%. And now here we are, and sort of in the last couple of years, things are kind of slowly grinding their way to getting better, but it's much slower than anyone expected. And as sort of people's stories as we've gone around, you can tell that things are not great in America. Was great.
You can spell.
Does anyone need a correct?
So yeah, that's just the chart on the front, and then if you move to the second page on the back, going into more personal finance, I looked on the internet, the best place for financial advice, and found kind of a breakdown of what financial experts kind of say your budget should be, which is 50% necessities, 20% either savings or debt payment, sort of depending on where you are in your life. Yeah. And 30% discretionary, which is going out to dinner and buying wine and buying PDR and clothes and vacation. And this sort of recommended amount to spend on housing is, depending on where you look, sort of between 25 and 35%.
She's doing great. That's not in the city.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was kind of the reaction that I was looking for. That's the point. And especially here, a significant amount of people spend 40 to even 50% of their income on housing, which sort of then cuts down on how much you can spend on food and how much you can save for retirement. And so hopefully we can talk about that. And then this very long page, which you don't need to read now, it is a sort of a summary of this report that came out about a year ago about how some 47% of Americans can't cover a $400 emergency. So you break your ankle and you fall out in an offer almost half of Americans like couldn't pay for that in a single month. They would just put it on their credit card or borrow money from someone, and so that is also to sort of show that if you're in that boat, you are not alone. And then on the back, yeah, I'm just gonna say, just on the back we have a little worksheet of sort of where you can add up what you pay and make a little budget. But we won't do that now. So
Oh, I was just gonna say, I mean, I feel like the question of like people not being able to cover a financial emergency kind of segues well, I think, into the Wall Street Journal article, which you may have had a chance to skim. I mean, it's a very silly article in a lot of ways. I mean, I think it's safe to say that all of us are not confronting the problem of having 6 cars, 2 speedboats, a townhouse, multiple vacation homes, and the latest electronic devices, and gourmet groceries and pricey dinners. But we thought it was interesting because it sort of speaks to the idea that even if you have money, you don't necessarily know how to spend it, or how to save it, or how to apportion it. And I think that seems applicable in this discussion because we are actually a much wider range of like financial situations than I expected. I sort of expected it to be like a lot more young people in debt, and we're a much broader cross section. And I think this article also, there are moments where even though you read it and it's like, I mean, I was laughing, it's like it's absurd. But there are moments where I think they point to some very true things. The idea that like people will spend money to keep up appearances or to try to be in a certain social circle, or because they aspire to be in a certain social circle. And also the idea of spending to satisfy like emotional needs and like, to make yourself feel better about stuff. I mean, that's real. And I think it also has some good advice in terms of, like allowing yourself the latte and not buying the pricey dinner or
the speedboat.
The speedboat. Yes. If you want to scale up from the dinner. Or just being strategic about what you spend on and what you don't spend on. I know for myself, like I've always had certain things that I allow myself to indulge in and other things that I don't.
So what don't you allow yourself to indulge in?
So okay, I have basically.
Talk about that.
Yeah, let's talk about spending. My thing is that I don't really buy new clothes. I pretty much buy my whole wardrobe at thrift stores. That's always been the case. I am really fortunate in that I haven't changed sizes in a lot of years, so I just generally don't have to buy a lot of clothing. But I also, I don't know. I got into this habit in college and I sort of never changed. So I don't really go, like when I go to a big normal store, I'm a little bit overwhelmed because I'm used to over shopping at thrift stores now. Like when I go to H&M, there's like music pumping and it's like there's so much choice and there's so much I buy music pumping, which is actually good because then I'm less likely to spend. But so I will spend a fair amount eating out. I feel like that's very much for me a part of my New York life, and it also has to do with like how late I work. It's all related, right? I work late. I don't have time to go home and make dinner. I buy food. It's all related, and I can sort of justify that, but I don't spend the money on clothing or like I don't wear makeup, so like I don't spend money on makeup. I don't really buy a lot of shoes. Like I just don't really do a lot of, I guess, like the girl things, for lack of a better word.
You don't pay that in tax.
Yeah, but that also probably, according to recent articles that you wrote about, that also probably means I won't get a better job. Because women have to look good to get better jobs. Anyway, what about you?
Yeah. Oh, just by the way, we're gonna we did our little speech thing and sort of feel free to jump in and join the conversation. But yeah, I something that I very consciously did when I first started working is decide that I really, really, really hated making lunch and bringing it and then having to bring Tupperware home, and I always forgot it, and I would forget lunch in the fridge, and so then I just decided that I was not going to make lunch and I was just going to budget so that I could buy lunch for myself every day. And I spend whatever $10 to $15 every day at work on lunch, and there are things that are nice about that. Going outside, for instance. I can't see outside from my office, so going outside can be very nice. Although sometimes when the weather is bad, I spend more than $15 on Seamless, which is not great. But I'm about to go to grad school, and I'm coming to terms with the fact that my income income is going to change, and I'm determined that I will make lunch for myself, so that I don't spend $15 a day on lunch.
But I think this brings up, I mean, if you look at the worksheet, when we were talking about this worksheet here, something that, I mean, I think this, again, this might be a very New York thing, but, and maybe like a young person New York thing, but for me, like looking at this sheet, I got very sort of like, maybe existential for lack of a better word, like looking at the word food. I was like, what does that mean? We need food to eat, like food is sustenance, but it means so many different things. I mean, it can mean eating out with your friends, which like you need dinner, but you also could have probably made dinner at home. But also if you shop at Whole Foods, like I do, which is totally bougie, and I admit that, like that's really expensive. So am I actually saving money by buying groceries? Like unclear. So I feel like, I don't know, I just feel like it's in some ways it's more complicated than just saying like you can spend this much on food, or I spend this much on food. Like, you know, could I spend less on food, and would that really help? I don't know the answer to that much.
I work about 80 hours a week, either at the Whitney or in my studio, whatever I'm doing. And I'm working at the warehouse where we're mostly moving heavy crates. I like to go outside when it's pretty too, but I make lunch by cooking dinners and having enough left over so I can just pack it for lunch. Because I don't have time to cook individual meals. I'll cook a dinner that'll last me 5 days.
Right.
It gets really boring. But I don't have a choice because I'm really tapped.
Right.
And but I will go outside and sit in the sun when it's a beautiful day because the warehouse has no windows, and you gotta get out.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, yeah, I haven't been to a restaurant now in years. I don't go to movies because I'm just not, like I said, I'm starting over like the 7th or 8th time, and I just can't. I don't have excess.
But it's interesting too because we were talking about this. So Shane recommended, and I was reading some of her work. This Helene Olin, right? That's her name. And well, do you want to talk about? I feel like the latte. This is all sort of applicable to the latte factory.
There's a little bit applicable to the latte factor.
Well, just the idea of like putting back on small things, how it helps.
Yeah, so there's this writer who I admire a lot, Lane, who she writes a column for Slate now, and she was the personal finance columnist at the LA Times for a long time, and she wrote a book called Pound Foolish, which is basically about sort of personal finance experts and how they kind of peddle a bunch of crap. And there's this specific instance of what is called the latte factor, which is if you skip having a Starbucks latte every day, you'll have like several $1,000s within a couple of years. If you just take that $3 or $4 a day and
put it in the curse jar, yeah.
And invest it. And she spends a whole chapter in her book being like, for one thing, like nobody's investing $3 a day. For another thing, like that's wildly unreasonable expectations of the returns that you're gonna get on that money. And the last thing, and her most important point, is that like people are not ruined financially by the $3 a day they spend on coffee. People are ruined financially by spending $300 more than they have on rent, or those big purchases that you have to make every month, and that is sort of where people have to cut back if they can.
What is her last name?
Olin, O-L-E-N.
I would just challenge that a little bit, and it's not actually challenging it so much as it's complicating it, but I know lots of people, and I have family members who have gone bankrupt, not because they have a latte every day, but because they eat out every day. And they don't go to fancy places, but they go to McDonald's or Pizza Hut or whatever, and it's 3 meals a day, and that's hundreds of dollars. And that's not like, oh, they've made, and it wasn't the best financial decisions. When you have 2 people working, when are you supposed, and they have 3 kids, like when are you supposed to cook dinner?
Well, that's why I bought a crock pot. I can throw it in there and come back 8 hours later and dinner's done.
Likewise. Crap pot and rice cooker.
Please. No, go ahead.
I have a question about that. So, somebody buying a latte every day, that feels really more of an emotional need.
Yeah.
Lattes don't have that much caffeine, it can't be caffeine. Right? So if you're saving, but if you're, trying to save money by not buying lattes, don't people tend to have these emotional surges where all of a sudden they'll just, because they've been depriving themselves so much, they'll just go shopping or whatever it is, like buy
Right.
an airfare or
Right,
tickets
right.
somewhere, and then
If
they spend
you-
the money anyway
Right.
because they're not getting the emotional satisfaction on a day-to-day basis.
And one thing I would add, I mean, you know, part of like Jen and I's idea about this project and thinking about luxury and affordability, right? We live in a city that many of us who are artists are here because there's a cultural value and an artistic community, and it costs a lot more to live here than other places. But at the same time, you know, the development that's going up looks a certain kind of way, and that there are many fashion stores that have things that, like H&M, please, that's like,
I know.
I get anxiety
But that's
going
like the
into
closest like normal store I go to.
right, but, you know, I mean, there's a kind of sense that, you know, we're talking a little bit about like a kind of like personal austerity system,
Yeah.
and the amount of incredible willpower it takes to like navigate a city where there are extremes, you know, on either side.
And the city, I think, also is stressful. Like, I feel like that's part of it. Like, I know that I am super stressed out because of my job, and that affects every area of my life, including my spending. I mean, I feel like living here is it takes such an emotional toll that, like, you just want to buy that fucking dinner with your friends
No,
because
you
you're
get a treat.
exhausted.
Well,
And
something,
you just need
even something like groceries
Yeah.
are like where I live in this village, if I get the grocery stores closest to me are a Whole Foods, a West Market, they're both just like, I mean, you know, they're what
so
they are.
expensive, yeah.
And then there's also Trader Joe's, which is just like a battlefield.
Yeah.
I just like don't have
That's like 5
Yeah.
hours
the
of your
willpower
day.
to deal with. And like even if they're like smaller markets where I know like my boyfriend and I both know like the place across the street has really cheap eggs weirdly. But they also have extraordinarily expensive cereal. And so like there are days like there are genuinely from like I'm gonna go get eggs, milk, this thing, that other thing from like the small stores in the neighborhood, and then go get our other shit that's like cheap, still pretty cheap at Whole Foods because that's easy. But like having to navigate going to 7 different grocery stores
Yeah.
is like just absurd.
Yeah, I mean, the food has become a problem. I'm in Thornhill, and when we got there, we had food that we fondly called big bodega. And little bodegas, yeah, really, because I mean, they're just rotten, crappy vegetables and whatever. Even if you go to the farmer's market in Carroll Gardens, I think they were selling, and I'm like,
You know who can afford
Right. I mean,
No, it's not
you're
for
also like
us.
this one.
we are lucky to have a house that we bought in the 80s. And it's cute to see Ethan Hawke walk down the and his dog leash gets wrapped around the stroller wheels. The house is now for like $4 million. Our many stores, luckily there's Atlantic Avenue. Runs it, and consignment. Very
I think there was a protest in Chelsea because they're getting the one like normal grocery store left, and like
I never saw the Prestige as this big.
I just want to say one other thing about food. I feel like in the city, that's also how you network with your friends and network with other people and actually part of your job.
The houses
And
are too
so-
small to have like people over for dinner.
Yeah,
I reckon
That's
say
exactly
that.
right.
I've had dinner parties for 50. I can fit.
Yeah.
We got 20
No, but
to
it's
the railroad,
Right.
but it was like airplane seating.
Yeah.
Once you sat down, you were there.
Oh, yeah, you don't get out.
But it is
Spirit
sort of part of
airlines.
the social fabric here more too, so it's easy to go out and spend a lot, you know.
But
that way
this
too.
sort of also relates to, I mean, this event is what it is, but when I originally thought, talked to Bill and Jen about an event, one of the things that I was really thinking about, and I think this is very related, is like, sort of the question, I mean, I know we have people here who aren't from New York, but most of us live in New York, and it's like the question of what sacrifices we make, and, actively choosing to stay here, and have really, but again, like, the like fabric, and then that won't you will eat out. If you didn't eat out, why would you worth living in New York anymore?
And the restaurateurs would be sad if you stopped.
Well, and the money that you spend on food also goes toward paying commercial rent and the restaurants and the grocery stores and paying tolls for the trucks to get into the city and et cetera, et cetera.
I did just want to add on your note, you joked that you could never break up with your boyfriend, but I know two couples that
Oh, yeah.
like, when the other partner got a better job, he or she left their partner because they could afford to move out. And this is like kept
Wow,
relationships
that's
together and all
sweet.
Whereas when I first moved here, the people I was subletting from broke up. And so he moved into the closet, like literally. In the closet because they couldn't afford to move out. And so I moved out because that was weird.
You're like the child, the awkward child.
A little bit.
I think that's something that's interesting as well, is that not all of your friends are in the same situation as you.
Yeah.
Or not everybody in your professional network is in the same situation. So, it's very easy in, I'm assuming other cities, but definitely here, to have people in your social circle who are extremely wealthy and extremely broke. And some people understand, some people don't,
Yeah.
or they just don't even ask you because they assume you can't afford it, or they assume you can, so then all of a sudden it's like a $200 dinner, or, it's just navigating that as well, and kind of building up a trust with those relationships that you can say things. It's a very interesting and sometimes stressful situation as well.
Yeah, and I mean, we had a previous conversation about the idea of whether private property is okay, but money is also one of those things, whether it's an upper class value or something down to us, we don't talk about money very often, and there's still a real stigma attached to it, so, pressure to kind of.
It's left over from the hippie days, too.
Yeah,
And
well, even talking about money is
that was
also
more
bad,
feminist than I
right?
can, but that's also gender. Like,
Yes.
women talk about, are sort of socialized to talk about money a lot less than men are socialized to talk about money, which then like brings out negotiating.
That's interesting.
That's a big problem in our world, especially because it's like
Yeah.
I've noticed that.
I mean, everything's freelance.
Yeah, like it's different than other professions. Like I feel like a lot of other professions, it's easier to talk to somebody and your girl and kind of figure out what the appropriate going rate is. People are very like, it's hard to figure out like what the right amount is.
Well, when everyone's freelance, there's no like solidarity, so I feel like then there are no standards. With journalism, it's very similar, where like you're just sort of like, people are starting to unionize and there's discussions about it, but people are very cagey because it becomes every person for him or herself, and then people don't want to share because it's like, oh, but I want to protect mine, and then you don't even know what the standard is.
My boyfriend used to work in development, and now I also work in development, building relationships with rich people. But
How's that going?
I make $45,000 a year, so like there's only so many things. Like luckily, a lot of events in art land are free. Like gallery openings are free. Like there are talks to go to that are free. There's like programs
trying to sell this luxury item, right? And so these free events are subsidized by the wealthy people in the city, and sort of the wealthy people who in the much bigger picture are kind of like screwing you over, right?
Wait a minute, this is a free art event.
Define free. I mean, free to attend.
We're also in an
Not free
Airbnb,
for
which is
dues.
like a whole nother
Yeah.
conversation
Yeah.
about money and rent.
Don't quite know what the rent is on this place, but we know how much it costs to rent it for 4 nights.
Yeah, I think
It
the rent
is
is like 3,000 on Zillow for this one.
What about this one?
For this apartment?
I think, or something in this building, I looked it up on Zillow, it's about 3,000 a month.
Right. Well, we're subsidizing significantly.
Thanks, Sasha.
Yeah, but
Yeah, but I guess then we should talk. One of the things that I wanted to talk about is sort of space and geographic space in the city and housing, and sort of for the people who live in the city, sort of where do you live and how long is your commute, and sort of what is the trade-off between higher rents and being able to get to work in 15 minutes?
I'm a block and a half from here. I've been here for 10 years. I had 10 years in Williamsburg, in South Williamsburg. Before then, I've been moved out of Tribeca, Chelsea, Soho. I've been shoved out by the developers each time. Fortunately, this time, my landlord is a dear friend of mine. He hasn't raised my rent in 10 years. Yeah, that's the first good deal I've had in a long time. But I can only stay there because I've got roommates. And it's when 2019 comes around, the L train shuts. Getting to the city's gonna be a pain in the ass.
yeah.
Yeah.
And I do feel like, I mean, even just being in this room, like if you're in a room with people who live in New York, you're gonna get a number of stories like that, or like mine, where you're like, oh, and also I'm really lucky. I got this, like my friends and my boyfriend was pregnant or whatever. Like increasingly, I find in conversations more and more, it's like more and more people.
Lucky people who are
Yeah.
here.
Well, that was,
Yeah,
I mean,
that's
the mob landlord, I lost for 5 years, but he bribed the appellate court to get rid of me. 150 years of New York legal precedence. I've been hanging on to my son, so I was fighting. So he saved my ass because I just lost everything again. And so he said, here, you can move into here. And the reason they're really, really good to me is because his mother runs the business. My landlady human. So
your answer.
it works.
Month of security deposit.
Where do other people live? Like, and people who are thinking like, Aisha, you were talking about like trying to move out from living with your family. Like, have you been looking? Like, where?
Oh yeah.
Don't be
So
sorry.
I moved to New York City when I was 12. I'm 37 now. So I moved to New York City like 25 years ago. So the neighborhood that I live in now, and it unfortunately is a neighborhood that's got like a big bullseye on gentrification. The rest of the city doesn't. But I live in Stuyvesant, and it just really
Oh
does.
yeah.
And I think like I want to say like on average every year for the past like 4 or 5 years, like the average thing has gone up like at least $100 a year. Like just literally,
Yeah.
a studio is probably
Yeah.
not like 7, 8, 9, so I think it just keeps going up. Yeah, like so I had a studio apartment that was like it would like in those situations could be considered a good deal. So it was like 900. But when I moved out, because I thinking with my family, that went up to 1,000, and I don't think that guy's moving out anytime soon.
No.
Was it rent stabilized? Was it rent?
No, more a month than I wanted to pay. And I was just like, whatever, I'll make it work. And I did it. And I moved out a year later because I was just like, I needed that $300 a month.
You also didn't know the elevator was always gonna break in here.
Yeah, and I lived
And
on the
you're
9th floor,
not
and the
there.
elevator was out for like 3 months, and it was really not great. But also the other thing is the landlord was like, I could tell that the landlord was pushing out really like older tenants who had been there for a really long time to get higher rents, and I just like didn't want to be a part of that, and that was like a factor too.
I lived in a building like that too.
I lived in a building like that and used to live with people. It's like mixed between young people and people who've been there for 20 years. And recently the gas line faced and they charged the tenants. And some people protested the rent increase and they sent us all a letter saying that their protests were rejected. And Frank X in apartment 1B stated that he didn't have, a stove, but he was lying. And they said this about like 3 different naming names and apartment numbers. And then telling you that your rent is increased by $100 because of repairs.
I would say in that like in response to that situation, there's a great website called MIRentStabilize.com, and if you look it up, it gives you a lot of information, but then you can also find ways to get your rent history on your specific apartment. And a cursory glance of our apartment, which was destabilized many years ago, a friend of ours who works in real estate was like, I'm pretty sure that what I'm seeing here wouldn't be the kind of renovation that would destabilize this apartment, so there could be something you could look into around that. But I think my location versus like convenience or the commute, I don't think I've like maybe for 2 years 1 year we lived more than like no, I mean like all the apartments I lived in New York, with the exception of one apartment, had been literally like 2 blocks from the train. And it wasn't just like I moved to New York, so I wouldn't have to have a car. And the kind of corridor of convenience and access to trains, you can kind of look at those subway lines and just see lines of gentrification moving out. I mean, Anthony Reynoso, who's the city council person for Williamsburg and parts of Bushwick, showed a map, and it was just the concentration of wealth along the subway lines. And that's something that
specifics of it.
yes, it's absolutely on the L, and you can see it kind of creeping. People make over $100,000 a year or more. That is just following the kind of train lines, and it's part of the reason why I moved to New York was to be sort of near a train.
But now you have to get more footloose.
Wasn't near a train. It was a 15-minute walk to a G. There were 2 buses that were right on the other side of Hollow Street. None of them ever came on time. They didn't work, and it just made me like, if this is what everyone else is experiencing, this is like awful. And so what isn't invested in the city to make things easier? To be in certain neighborhoods, or why certain neighborhoods become.
You're however far from the subway and that's your way to get to work. That's
Didn't take place
You don't
because
want
they were too far from the subway.
So there's a lot of research that shows that people adjust to small spaces better than they adjust. People just like hate on commutes. And so like you can adjust to living in 350 square feet. That's 20 minutes to work. Much better than you can adjust to living in 1,200 square feet an hour from work. So like I'm interested to see. I feel like a lot of the gentrification has gotten sort of to the point of being like almost an hour from
It takes me 40 minutes from here to get to work.
And so I'm wondering sort of what happens when it gets further than that.
Yeah, but there's a lot of people who live in outlying areas around, you know, Manhattan and have long commuted, and their commutes have only gotten worse as gentrification has happened because the trains get crowded, you know, get on it. Because I mean that certainly there's already a huge existing population of people who have long commuted in for well over an hour. You know, it might reach a threshold for sort of professionals who want to be within close proximity, but you know, I don't know. That seems to be.
My family's in Austin, Texas, and they'll drive an hour to get to work.
Yeah, that's like one part. That's one thing that I think actually might, even though of course like commutes are tied up in this whole question of gentrification and just like access to the things that you need to live your life. Like I lived in Atlanta for a while, and like Atlanta is a shit show.
Yeah.
Like oh my gosh, like I
Yeah.
can't even.
In LA, I know people who commute like 3 hours, and I'm just like I can't imagine what living. Well, A, you're in Orange County, and so what appeal that has, I don't understand. But yeah, like it's like. Beach really worth spending 6 hours a day in your fucking car?
There's
only so much NPR. Yeah, right?
If you drive, you're in your own little personal pod, whereas in New York,
No, you're
like
screaming and yelling.
No, having done them both, you're sitting, you're reading, you're
I've done
multitasking.
both
Oh, you read on the
over
train.
an hour is a little much. Like I used to live in Orange County. And I wouldn't trade it for New York, but I can understand people who don't want to be an hour and a half on the train. Right?
I do think also, I mean, but to me, like, even the idea of a commute assumes a regular job. I mean, I feel like also increasingly people don't have full-time jobs that they go to every day. I mean, I think at least especially, well, I mean, people I know in our 30s, like, I have a full-time job and that's kind of rare. So I have a commute, but I think a lot of people don't. Or they have, like, the job they go to here, they teach at 5 schools, so they have to get to 5 different places. Or they have a full-time job for a year and then it changes. Like, I moved to Brooklyn because of the job I had then, and then it was okay that I stayed, but like I worked at that job exactly a year. It wasn't like a job I stayed at for 30 years. So I think in some ways the commute, not that it matters less, but I feel like because work is so different now, it's less of a shaping force, at least to me.
I mean, it adds up. I'm thinking of like lower income mothers, for instance. Let's say they have 3 different jobs. One of them have time to pick out dinner.
Yeah.
Or pick their kids up from school. If their commute is an hour every time, you have to go somewhere. I mean, that really eats into the other things that she's spending less on or.
Yeah, very early in the planning of this project, one of the conversations that I had with the other neighbor was about whether or not New York City would be a living city or a dead city. Meaning a dead city when people who work in the city are commuting from many, you know, like more than an hour away, coming in from totally different, you know, Jersey, or whether or not we'll have a city where the people who work there live there, you know, and don't have crazy commutes, or you know, like your teachers live in communities where they're teaching the students, you know.
Manhattan, I think, is already kind of dead in that sense. I mean,
A lot of people live in that.
I mean, people do, no, they do, but I do feel like, I mean, there's the amount of commuters into like Midtown and downtown and financial district, I mean, it's so high. And Heuristic especially.
Well, and all of the like a lot of the new luxury buildings are gone by people who are they're investment properties and
The money laundering.
and yeah, and
Seriously.
increasingly the sort of big glass buildings are only 20% full.
But they're completely sold. Oh.
Yeah,
What
that's
that's missing is that's extra density in terms of the building space, and if the spaces go empty because people are buying them for investment from Russia or wherever, it doesn't mean that there's less people still living there. Right? That's this extra space that's being added on.
Right. But like there are certain neighborhoods that sort of increasingly are feeling dead because there are fewer people living there because there are just glass buildings that
Yeah, and it's
Chinese
not
and the
able to
Russian
support the
own.
businesses or the restaurants, you know. I mean, it seems like part of the other side of this is in areas like Bushwick. One of the things we put on our one sheets for like these different departments are like the quality of schools in a given area, and you know, some of them, you know.
You didn't get one of these there on the
Yeah.
team. Right? So.
You know, a lot of the development isn't necessarily, they're not investing in schools or hospitals or
even in proper
Busted.
sewage.
Yeah.
They're just
Yeah.
sucking it.
Oh, the English kills crick over
Yeah.
there. We know some artists have tried to address this, but there's so much runoff and
Mm-hmm.
you know, the environmental impact is, you know, that's sort of like what is the responsibility of the developers in this? I mean,
Well, that depends upon who's bribing who.
We're, so we, I mean, we can definitely keep doing the free-for-all conversation, which I quite like. We haven't actually done any specific talking about anyone's financial problem. So I just wanted to like throw it out there if anyone wants to, if there's something anyone wants to talk about or tackle. I mean, the idea here was like, we're not, and none of us here is a financial planner or like a financial expert, but you know, sort of riffing on the idea of crowdsourcing and like we're all here, we all have different histories and lives and expertise and ideas. So I feel like,
Yeah, if anybody's
if
any
you want to like hit
questions.
strangers with some questions or problems, like I think we should do that.
What I'm like, what I'm gonna try to do now, I mean, I've spent the last 4 years just getting back up again. And now the people at the Whitney have decided, since I actually said go out and get us all shows, and now I've gotten everybody, they hadn't shown it here, so now they all gotten all these shows. They're willing to, and they're one option, they're willing to back me if I can find another deal like I used to do with, getting a space, renovating it, renting it out, getting this money. I just now have to find an area that's outside the city because you can't do that here anymore. So I have people, looking for me in Newark and some other places, but
I was gonna say Jersey.
Yeah, Newark.
Yeah.
The local politicians like asked Eve Sussman, who's an artist, just
I know, yeah.
You know, they told her flat out, like, we will give you a building for $100 if you come. Like, we welcome
Parsons.
Mm-hmm.
Parsons is thinking of, because I work for Parsons Department of Medicine, of having a campus in Newark. But like sitting in the department where I had my postdoc, it was like they were talking about it. It was like a study abroad in Newark. People were just like, I'm not going there. It's like,
Well, I feel like I've
Like,
been,
it's
I've
no
been invited
further
to
from-
shows at Mana,
Yeah.
and I'm just like, even though it's not further than going to Brooklyn from
Yeah, you
Manhattan.
can go to Bushwick.
If you live in Manhattan,
If you're on 6th Avenue and that 14th Street, it's about the same.
If you're in Brooklyn, it's
Yeah.
The people have either said Newark and they give the Jersey snob like they used to give Bushwick the snob.
Mm-hmm.
But they're also talking about Newburgh now. So I gotta go look up in both areas because I've gotta do that financial thing again. Because I got the shows going and now I don't have to find my kids. So.
Well, I have a financial tip. If you want to rent a car, you rent it in Newark. It's like
Yeah.
a quarter of the price
Yeah.
of renting in the city. So
Or
But you have the body and the boot. So.
yeah,
And the groceries
Or
are
renting from the
60% of
airport.
what they cost.
exactly. Go to Costco, go to Newark.
Okay.
go to Costco,
Save
go to
your money.
Newark, get your car, go to Costco,
That's what you do.
bring your groceries
That's
home.
what we do.
Buy gas.
Yeah, buy gas. Basically, just live your life in Newark, but then come home.
For something fun
Exactly.
to celebrate Brooklyn concerts in Prospect Park are only $4, and they're really good musicians.
when did they start charging for that?
Someday charge.
You don't have to pay
I think it's adjusted.
I've bought,
Oh, yeah, so yeah, 'cause when I lived in Park Slope, all the like band shells, all the shows were great.
I think they're suggested.
suggested,
Yeah.
yeah.
I walked in and been
And
like,
you can,
no,
or
I
you can
walked in.
send it.
Oh, have you like the Met is suggested entrance, and have you ever tried to go into the Met for free?
Yep.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
You have
You're
to
stink
give.
eye.
You have to give a quarter. I think you're
Yeah.
supposed to give like.
No, no, no.
No, you don't have to. Exactly. All it says is suggested donation,
Oh.
$15 or whatever.
Yeah.
Well, they got sued
Well,
about
they just
that.
lost. Yeah, there was a little lawsuit about that.
Right,
They
yeah.
settled, but there was a
Yeah.
lawsuit.
I feel like we haven't really tackled student debt or retirement, so if anybody wants to chat about that,
I mean,
or continue whatever.
I mean, I don't think we're gonna.
This isn't, I mean, so, we have some friends who bought some property upstate, about an hour north of the city. It's on a lake, it's not like, it could be a place to retire to, I don't know, but,
Don't
know.
hold upstairs.
well, it's like, it's a question. My wife has like 60,000 from an IRA from an early job, and would it, does it sound like even remotely good idea to like take some of that and park it in a property upstate?
If you can afford to pay the taxes,
Yeah,
you-
You
And
lose
there-
what, a
the
third
taxes
or
went
something?
way up.
Yeah, see, I'm only talking about going into something that's gonna make me money. I am not a rush in parking my money here because I'm an oligarch. So it's gonna go find a property that, like Eve has done, and like I used to do, I just didn't have the heart for a while. and just go in there and then again spend another couple of years just doing nothing but build walls.
But
I feel like that's not. Would you rent it out?
That's the thing.
My father might actually be interested in living there for a few years. It could be a rental thing. We could also spend some time up there, and then here's the ethical question: we could like Airbnb our place in
Yes.
the city, you know,
Right,
and
Yes.
use
right.
this situation, which
I mean,
wasn't necessarily an option as easily 5 years ago.
Right.
I mean, it's really about the money sitting in the IRA, like it's money, and it will like that interest compounds,
Which is like close to 50.
and
So you have to
like
figure out where the return on that is.
It's just,
Yeah,
you know,
like-
we don't have any exit strategy from New York City
Right.
in a small house with some
It's a
friends,
great exit
and there's a
strategy.
community of people. Like, it might be the
Yeah.
place where we go to sign off.
yeah. I mean that kind of brings up the question of like what is worth it to, and like what sort of is value from a more from a more than financial sense. Like, is it, do you want to sort of enjoy that property for, you know, the next 50 years, or, you know, is it more worth it to you to have the extra money from that the IRA is going to earn for another 20 years or whatever?
So we should look at the rate of return on the IRA over that period of time, and
Yeah.
also if because the property values, to be
Yeah.
honest, in that area have just plummeted because the property taxes went up.
Mm.
So now if you want to buy something, it's dirt cheap.
But it costs you more each month.
Although I think it goes back to the point that we were talking about the sort of like emotional release of the latte at the beginning of the
Yeah.
conversation, right? Like if at the point that you have something that then removes the opportunity cost of having to think about it, find a place, make a decision, all these other sort of stuff. So if you have like a way to relax that makes you whatever percentage more efficient
Mhm.
in your like normal day to day.
Right.
Mhm.
Happiness quotient.
Yeah, happiness wants.
Yeah.
But for work.
I'm wondering if anybody has gone to or knows of any really good financial planners who are good at dealing with artists and do you know what I mean? Like independent ones who aren't associated with companies that you should go are money into this retirement thing.
I mean, I did like there's like a tax company that I went to that deals with like freelancers and like independent people. They
You
were
know what they
good,
do
but
that?
There's a free
Yeah.
resource called Green Path that actually just exists to get people to budget
Yeah.
and pay off their debts. It's
But I'm
free.
wondering, it's when I was I'm divorced now, but I was married and living in Australia for a long time. And we had this amazing financial planner who was just like basically with your dilemma. She would just be like, let me look into this. You know, this is what will make you happy. This is what you need to, you know. It was just there's a level of knowledge there that went beyond an account
Mhm.
or beyond
Right,
you know,
right.
helping to budget. And I'm wondering if anybody has
Mhm.
found somebody here with that, or somebody
I mean,
like me with my student loans. I don't know.
I'm
Should I
sure
try to pay
this
them off
person
now, or should I just
exists,
pay them off?
but finding this person.
Right, and how much, I
Yeah.
wonder how much it costs to sit down for an hour with a financial planner.
Well, that you
like I always wonder how much I should be paying versus how I can save. Like, again, you can't have both, and it's like, oh fuck, I'm
Right.
screwed.
Loans, right? Like there's stuff. Like
Yeah.
that financial planning stuff that I mean maybe some
Yeah.
people
But
don't
yeah,
know.
but one of the interviews with Helene that you sent me, it's the question really trustworthy.
organize all of some of the tools, like be a little bit of a bridge or dad conversation. And this is what
As opposed to each of us individually figuring out how to
Right.
get our situation okay.
which
Right.
I mean is really yes.
We need to do both
But
at the same
that's,
time.
and that's the
Yes, we
problem,
need
no
to
one
do
has,
you need to
both,
live.
right? Like,
no one
right.
has time
But
because they're
you
trying
know,
to get
organizing
their else.
artists is like herding cats.
But I think also, I mean, that's the problem is also that you need to have the time to be able to even look outside of your own
Yeah.
situation,
You're
which
working 8
requires
hours a
the
week.
money,
Yeah.
the time, like the, you know, if you're constantly trying to figure out how to make ends meet, like what time
That is part of the 1%. I mean, that's how they've kept everybody down, is because we're so poor, we're running around like rats all the time. We can't organize, we can't stand up, we can't find choice.
So I will. This is not. It's in the kind of fact-finding wage, which is working artists in the greater economy, is trying to do the impossible and herd the cats. Which you know they've had some success in nonprofits to pay artists a certain fee. Is another way of talking about a kind of union, and it's lots of freelancers or people who find similar situations about organizing around these issues. Maybe we need new language or new terms for it. Maybe the work that we do looks different, but to try to like work on that structural imbalance that like wages have done this, maybe you're climbing a little bit, and rent goes like that,
Well, Witch's point being the cultural capital of art.
Their shoes. Like your class.
Poverty.
Yeah. Healthier calories.
Journalists are the two kind of professions where it said that you can like just like noticing that these people they can be depressed, and a lot. Just like noticing that I didn't seem that happy.
They are, because they are in funding. It can make them very wacky, but they also are vulnerable and humane. Sometimes I work in philanthropy, and I run into billionaires and trillionaires and that sort of people, and it's just a facet of who they are, and it shouldn't make anyone feel bad because they're one way and you're another way.
But I also run the gallery don't have the money. Like, not run, people who like work at the front desk of the gallery don't have the money. So it's this weird incongruity between like, you know, Larry Gagosian in the back and the person up front, who's usually a woman. But I feel like you should talk to other people in similar positions. I mean, I think most people who work in Chelsea are actually like you. You know what I mean? Like, I think there's a lot more views in Chelsea than there are of them, and I think that might be either comforting or powerful for you to like talk to other people.
And murder fantasies might be okay.
But also, I wonder how often, like, I go to Chelsea with some regularity because I have to for my job. But, like, I need to keep, like, and so the people who I like go with, we're, you know, like, you want these shoes? Or I'm about to die. And so yeah, so I wonder maybe how, like, yeah, you notice people if you're a shoe person in the like product or whatever, but that I think, I mean, it's a different conversation about like functions that are the role the galleries are now playing that is museum-like in a certain kind of way, and so like how the role of the gallery to a certain extent is changing.
And I was
in the capital of the art market.
I was having this conversation yesterday because I went to see the David Hammons retrospective, and I was talking to a friend, and we were talking about it being in a gallery versus being in a museum. And it's interesting because I think we think of museums as being more accessible spaces. They like have education programs, they're meant to be accessible. But in reality, they cost money, and galleries don't. So in a weird way, even though Newton Gallery is a townhouse on the Upper East Side, and most people don't feel that comfortable walking into it, you can walk in, and you can't just walk into a museum. You can't just walk into the Whitney without paying $20 or whatever it is. So I think it is like there's more there. I think.
Yeah, and I mean the discomfort around fashion or the art in the galleries, and piggybacking on what Julie was saying, is that the art is still open and available to all of us, and that's that kind of like common place where, you know, if you have an opinion or a thought or an idea about the work, it's just as valuable as the other person who might drop an enormous amount of money on the thing to own it.
Not really know what they're buying.
And they may have no idea. And the other thing is, you know, like, you know, artists or like just being okay with your own fashion, what you like, your own sense of style, and not tied to someone else's perception of a brand. You know, there's kind of a liberation in that, being like, okay, you need that, that's good for you.
And the art world's good for that. You can do whatever you want, kind of. And just like people are
Go
like,
the
well,
other
it's the art
direction.
world, so whatever.
Don't worry about norm 4 or maybe norm 4 is what maybe also saying that, like, from my own experience working in a gallery in a commercial setting and in like a non-profit arts organization setting, like a lot of the sales that are happening in Artland that aren't in like the stratosphere of the art market are really just like based on relationships anyway. So like, don't be afraid to talk to those assholes. Like, you know more about the work than they probably do coming in anyway, and they want to hear your opinion about it.
And just to piggyback off of you two, actually, and this is kind of a gendered comment, but I seriously cultivate an overblown sense of self in order to, no offense guys, but in order to like be on the same level as men. Do you know what I mean? Because I think men just have an easier time of having self-worth, and women need to work at it. So it's okay, like, and this is sort of serious and sort of silly, but it's okay to like constantly tell yourself that you are allowed to be there, you deserve to be there, you're the same as all these people. But I don't know, like for me it took a lot of work. So when I used to work at home, I think we mentioned this, like we talked about this before, about like how there's this weird thing that happens where like you work in a neighborhood that has one income level, or you live in one income neighborhood and then you work in a different income neighborhood. And I was really self-conscious when I lived in Loma, and I think that was when I started shopping in the closet actually.
Yes.
And also that I got really good at buying things off-brand. I've always been a person who likes quality things. Like I had a job where I was like, I don't want to buy
gonna go home and order
Have another
Chinese food
PA,
containers.
have another
We're all gonna make our lunches now. Chinese food containers.
Thank you for coming
Thank you so
and being
much,
so
everyone.
open and
For like this talking.
it's really not even a piece.
Can I give you this?
When did you eat good?
Oh yeah.
What? Those are good.
I'm really excited about it.
You did a good job.
It's actually funny because